Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 25th of August 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. We will be joined by Mark Anderson from American Free Press. Now, I do have to say that the Skype link is a little bit, how do we describe it? Iffy.
Iffy.
A little bit iffy. So
we'll do our best.
We'll do our best, but stay with us and I'm sure it will go okay. Brief comment on the weather, because I've received a strong lobby to at least say something about what's happening weather-wise around the country. Scotland not doing too well at the moment. Dull, cloudy, warm most places. And what else have I got on the screen? Brighton is sweltering. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but we'll take it at face value. Sunny on the south coast.
Yes. Somewhere else it looked like it was sweltering. Mark, you were visiting Donald Trump on what evening was that?
Tuesday, August 23rd.
Okay, so we have a picture of it here. Well, it looks like an action-packed event. How many people were there?
8,500 plus.
And sorry, where was this?
Austin, Texas, at the Travis County Expo Center.
So this is just one of the current swathe of events that he's holding. Were you inspired? Did he come across as a spectacular, likely president? How did you feel as you left this event?
Yeah, he came across as being stronger than the mainstream media portrays him to be. That's the main point.
Okay, well, give us a bit more. I think we've lost Mark.
I didn't hear the last question.
I say just give us a little bit more, Mark.
Well, this picture you're showing shows him welcoming the mothers whose sons died from the hands of illegal alien criminals, and this was a pretty dramatic point in that Austin rally. There were Border Patrol agents that joined them, and that was driving home Donald Trump's call to build a more solid and integrated border wall along the U.S. southern border with Mexico. And so this was a very dramatic point and an unexpected thing pretty much at the Trump rally in Austin.
Yes. Okay. Well, if we move on, we have reports that Nigel Farage attended last night's Donald Trump rally, and that was in Jackson, Mississippi. 15,000 people there, well, what did he have to say? He said, if you want change in this country, you better get your walking boots on, you better get out there campaigning, and remember, anything is possible if enough decent people are prepared to stand up against the establishment. I suppose there is truth in those words, but I'm just wondering why Farage feels that the presidential election is more important than Brexit, Brian?
Well, as you know, I've been fascinated with Nigel Farage for many years. I've consistently said that his job was to lead UKIP into no man's land, and that is what I maintain he's done, because just at the critical moment where we've got Brexit declared, but the government doing absolutely nothing to take us out of the European Union, Nigel Farage, first of all, he can't stay in politics because he's been threatened, apparently. So he's got to break away. You would have expected him to have withdrawn and gone very quiet. Where does he take himself? Right into the heart of American politics. And now he's on a world stage telling the Americans how to run their political campaign. Is this connected with his visit to the States? What was it, a year ago approximately, when he met up with Murdoch, I believe. I find this an insult to the 4 million voters that voted, of course, to come out the European Union on the back of Nigel Farage's UKIP party. And then when those people need him, where is he? In America. Have you got any idea why he was there, Mark?
Not offhand, Brian, I do not. But I do know that Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty needs to be enacted to make Brexit actually happen. And Farage jumped ship at a very critical point after Brexit, the initial Brexit vote was achieved. And so he should be really concentrating on that and not presidential politics in the U.S.
Indeed, but let's move on then, Mark, because in this latest edition of American Free Press here, you're focusing quite a bit on Hillary as well, as you would expect, because she's the other protagonist, of course. Now we've talked about the allegations over her health quite a lot over the last week or two, so we're not going to discuss that. But what's this story about the Clinton Foundation? Are there still rumblings of potential legal action against the Clintons?
Yes, in the next edition, coming up very soon of American Free Press, and people can read more at AmericanFreePress.net, we have several stories, not just on her health, but a couple at least, on the Clinton Foundation. And as you know, that's a tit-for-tat thing where people are who give money to the foundation are then given special deals. And this is supposed to have happened largely when Hillary was Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013. So this is an issue AFP is really exploring. I also have one here that you're showing on the screen, the lower left corner, and that's about Congress when they come back in session right after Labor Day here in September, wanting to pursue perjury charges against Hillary Clinton based on her testimony last year about Benghazi. There was 11 hours of testimony. People can read more about it at AFP, but that's supposed to be upcoming in Congress when they reconvene. So they're going to compare what Hillary told the FBI recently and compare that with what she told the Benghazi committee about last year sometime.
Okay. I'm afraid I think
this perjury.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. I think the Skype connection is just a bit too dodgy, so we're going to have to move on, I think.
Or try an audio only, possibly.
We'll move on to this in the meantime. Brian, what's the Daily Mail pushing here?
Well, I mean, it seems to me that we've got the Daily Mail simply pushing one of the quangos as if it is mainstream policy. But the key bit here, of course, is a very emotive headline: 57,000 EU migrants working in the NHS must be offered free British citizenship to stop the health service collapsing. So just think of the implications of all of this. The government has run a policy which has brought so many, I'm just going to say overseas people into the NHS, that we've now got a situation where they could go and the NHS collapses. Is that incompetence or is that treason? And the idea that they've all got to be offered free free citizenship, of UK, is not government policy. That's coming from the think tank IPPR. So what is the Daily Mail trying to do here? Is it trying to confuse people? So we've got Amber Rudd, who's apparently going to help close borders. That's what Theresa May is told. Interesting, after those comments from Donald Trump, who's saying that exactly the same thing should happen on the American-Mexico border. And then we've got more emotive statistics like this. Nobody quite knows what the net rate of migration is. So they're saying it's 327,000, of which 180,000 are from the EU. What we're really seeing here is a UK that's out of control. And this is not accidental. This is because we've had successive government policies to break down common sense governance of the country.
Yes.
Are they now shutting borders before the police state comes in with a vengeance? Is that what we do? Restrict travel? Everybody's going to be searched. If you've got any debts, you haven't paid your TV license, you're not going to be allowed out of the country. Is this where we're going?
Quite possibly. But one place that we've been mentioning that we're going for a long time is EU military integration. Brian?
Well, surely they've said that's untrue, Mike, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed, that's true. They have said that, but that doesn't make it so. And this is Mr. Sobotka, the Czech Prime Minister. This story's a couple of days old, but I've got a reason for bringing it up at this point. But anyway, what did he have to say? He said that because of terrorism, the migrant influx, and a new aggressive Russia, that a new military structure is needed. He's saying it's absolutely inevitable. He said, in the face of uncontrolled migration, even states in the centre of Europe has realised that the internal borders must be controlled. Aside from better coordination of foreign and security policy, I also believe that in the long term we will be unable to do without a joint European army. Now, something that I've been highlighting for a couple of years is the fact that Mr. Juncker, Jean-Claude Juncker, the European Commission President, one of Europe's two presidents, has been calling for an EU joint army which would react credibly to any external threat. And so it goes on. Juncker has been quoted as saying an army like this would help us better coordinate our foreign and defence policies and collectively take on Europe's responsibilities in the world. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we recorded an episode of Insight with David Ellis and you, Brian, and Patrick as well. That episode of Insight's now ready, and I'm going to be putting that on the for members only initially on the UK Column community website later on today. It is an extremely interesting conversation, and I suggest that people have a look at that later on, probably around tea time tonight. As you say, the government has consistently said, our government has consistently said that there's no such thing as EU military integration. We have demonstrated in Insight that there is such a thing as EU military integration. It is happening. And we just see this continuing dribble of comments from various EU leaders really calling for it, demanding it, and they just continue to make the situation with migration and so-called terrorism worse by the day in order to push this agenda through.
Can we also remind people, of course, that there's talk of Brexit and leaving the European Union, which we believe is a complete and utter lie by Theresa May and the Conservative government. But absolutely nothing has been said about David Cameron's 50-year defence pact with the French, which of course still stands. And so the integration, the principal military integration of the UK into the EU was done via that UK-French pact itself, Franco-British pact, and that still stands. So we are being told a complete pack of lies, and as we've recently seen, the Royal Navy's getting rid of another important repair ship, Royal Fleet Auxiliary. So more and more cuts in British military, which of course allows the European Union to justify we need this integrated European army. So every direction we go in at the moment, we are seeing utter lies by not only the respective Prime Ministers of the UK, but of course the Ministry of Defence, Mr. Fallon.
Indeed. Right, let's move on to surveillance. We mentioned this this week already, but these are the four newly appointed surveillance commissioners: Lord Bonamy, Lord Brackadale, Sir John Saunders, and Sir John Shell. Now, Sir John Shell, we don't have an image for because, of course, he's a Northern Irish judge, and they don't. Their images are pretty well protected. But this is the result of appointments that were made in June this year, when David Cameron appointed these four new surveillance commissioners. And just to give a bit of background to this role comes from Section 91 of the Police Act 1997, which provides for the Prime Minister to appoint surveillance commissioners. They must be people who have held high judicial office or have been members of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. There are a total of 6 surveillance commissioners and 3 assistant surveillance commissioners. These are the 4 new surveillance commissioners. And the role of surveillance commissioners is to provide oversight of the way that all public authorities in the United Kingdom, with the exception of the security services, so they're providing oversight of how these bodies carry out covert surveillance. So this might be your local council, it might be HMRC, it might be the police. These types of organisations. So who are these guys? Well, Lord Bonamy was a solicitor in litigant-oriented practice. He became Queen's Counsel. He then became advocate depute from 1993. He's Scottish, obviously, and he served as a judge on the UN Internal Criminal International Criminal Tribunal whenever they ran the tribunal on Yugoslavia. He became a member of the Privy Council in 2010, and he served on the Courts of Appeal in Scotland. Sir John Saunders, another barrister, became a High Court judge, and he's presiding judge for the South Eastern Circuit at the moment. Sir John Shell, as I say, Northern Irish judge, and Lord Bracketdale, he senior Crown Counsel, and again Scottish. So we seem to have a lot of Scottish input into this process again, and these, as I say, under REPA and so on, are providing oversight on how those REPA surveillance rules are applied by various public bodies.
And we could add to that, Mike, that of course the Scottish judges at the moment don't reveal their private interests, so you have no idea who these people are, who they're connected with, who they're in business with. But we're just told, as the good little public, patted on the head, that we should trust these individuals to spy on us. And of course, let's remember that the Scottish judiciary heavily implicated in the cover-up over the abuse of Holly Gregg. We've got the Doherty case now running, so it's quite clear that many people in the Scottish establishment absolutely not to be trusted. Are these people included in that bracket? We've no way of knowing.
Now, yesterday we mentioned the collaboration, the moves to merge, we believe, various fire authorities in the UK, and we hinted at the same process going on with the police. Well, the press release has come out, and police collaboration is absolutely on the cards. The same person behind it, Brandon Lewis MP, and he is. This is government calls for greater collaboration between police forces to drive down costs. So austerity is being the driver for this, and of course, what they're saying is that if police, they're effectively merging the financial back office of various police authorities, and that, Brian, has got to be a first step to actually merging the police authorities themselves.
Well, they're desperate to do this, Mike. Everything we see, first of all, they privatised the IT systems. We had IBM brought in. I think that was particularly with the Somerset and Avon police. And then, as you said, we've got this creeping partnerships with Devon and Cornwall police, Avon and Somerset, Dorset police. So they went for the regions. I think what we'll start to see now is you won't hear so much talk about regions. You'll just hear talk of cost-cutting collaboration in order to drive these together. But yes, in essence, they want a single police force because, of course, with a single police force, there's not even the puppet show of using independent police forces to investigate if there's a crime in another area.
Right. So so in other words, any wrongdoing in one police region was traditionally investigated by an external police region.
Yeah.
That isn't going to be possible.
No, that isn't going to be possible. No. And of course, the other thing is that as it becomes one big blob, police are going to have less contact with their patch. Originally, 43, I think it was, police districts where the police would know their beat areas, but we're not putting police on the beat, so they don't understand what's going on the ground. And now they're spending more and more time target and form filling. So this is deliberate policy for the next bit of the police state, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Mr. Lewis has been of great interest to me because policing minister, and we took the trouble to speak and email the Home Office to ask what the Home Office was going to do to support the very brave Metropolitan Police whistleblower. This was a remarkable saga. First of all, the Home Office said they were unable to listen to the audio through the UK Column website, so thousands of other people could do that, but not the Home Office. I believe they employ 15,000 professionals, but they couldn't seem to get that audio. So we then provided that audio to the Home Office separately, and we were then a little bit surprised and saddened that they were unable to open the file. They couldn't listen to that one, and then they needed a transcript. So eventually they were provided with a transcript. Then it went very quiet until we started to put the pressure on the Home Office to say, would you like to answer the original emails which said, what are you going to do to protect this very brave police whistleblower? And what are you going to do to investigate the cover-up by the Metropolitan Police, by politicians, by local authorities, charities and others, the abuse of children, including little girls found dead in the gutter? Well, yesterday I got a phone call from the media team in the Home Office, and they were very pleased with themselves because they said a letter is on its way. I opened my email account and sure enough, there was a letter. So let's just have a look at it. Now, we will try and make this easily readable, but the nub of it is, here is the letter addressed to me. And the essence of it is, well, don't worry, because the organisation that is protecting the whistleblower is the IPCC. So they're independent police complaints, and they've got it all in hand. And even though we are the government, we think it's best to leave it to the IPCC. And we also think that you should be reassured because we've got MPs like Mr. Lewis who are responsible for making sure the police do their job. Well, it gets more and more interesting. This is the start of the letter. It says, I am writing in response to your letter to the Minister published on your website UK column concerning a recent interview with a detective constable from the Metropolitan Police. Before I respond to the points raised in your letter, I would like to inform you that the Criminal Justice Ministerial Portfolio has transferred to the Ministry of Justice. Brand Lewis MP is the Minister for Policing and Fire Services. So Oliver Heald QC MP is the Minister for Courts and Justice, and Dr. Philip Lee MP is the Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Victims, Youth and Family Justice. Now, this, of course, was pure irrelevance because I'd already sent the correspondence to Mr. Lewis and I told the Home Office that was the case. But what we're actually interested in is this. It says, Dear Mr. Gerrish, I am, and in the second paragraph it says, before I respond. So I assumed that this letter had come from a genuine human being. But at the end of the letter, it actually transpired that there was no person. It was an anonymous letter. It had been written, presumably, by a computer in the Policing and Fire Services Directorate. And when I challenged the Home Office media team on this and said, how do I address a letter back to this anonymous person? Should I do Mr. Anonymous or Miss X? They couldn't really advise me. But I then discovered what this was about because after I left the conversation with the media team, I phoned the telephone number on the top of this letter. And this is what transpired. Essentially, the Home Office has deliberately hidden the identity of the individual writing the letter to me. The media team state that this is normal procedure and it will not affect how I address a response. Very important, this, because they kept pushing it. This is perfectly normal, no signature, no name, and it doesn't matter, Mr. Gerrish, because it won't affect how you then deal with the matter. I asked, should it be Mr. Anonymous or Miss X, but they were unable to advise on that. But this was really what they were doing. This is deceit, because when you phone up, the number at the top of the letter, the operator, who was very helpful, said, I'm unable to put you through unless you can tell me a name and a department. So the fact that the name was withheld means that when I phone that number, I go into no man's land because the operators, and I believe the lady was telling me the truth, she is unable to put me through. Deliberate, calculated deceit by the Home Office media team. When I asked the particular gentleman who had told him there was an email for me with the letter attached, he didn't want to tell me that either. So the moment we get into child abuse, it's cover-up and deceit by the British government. Well, of course, they mentioned the IPCC, so let's have a look at them, because the letter said that the IPCC had actually produced the policy on how they were going to deal with whistleblowers. So I went to the website, I had a look, I couldn't find the document the Home Office referred to, but I did note that Mr. Julian Blaisby was now the Director of Major Investigations. And if you want to go and have a look at him, I suggest you do, because you can see him on LinkedIn, his full profile. There's quite a lot of information here. Previously, Assistant Chief Constable with Staffordshire Police. And I did note down at the bottom that he's not only common purpose, but he's boasting that he's able to operate outside authority. So I would imagine that's pretty handy if you've got a little bit of trouble with child abuse. So we had a little look further for this gentleman, came up with the Sentinel's report, Staffordshire Police under investigation after social media drink drive naming. And what they did is they named people they'd picked up for drink driving offences before it had gone to court. So this was a quote from Julian Blaisby, Staffordshire Police Assistant Chief Constable at the time. "We can confirm we've been approached by the Information Commissioner's Office in relation to the recent drink driving campaign. They asked us to provide information on some elements of the campaign and will be providing a full response to the questions they've asked in the next few days." So they broke the law.
Sorry, I keep forgetting that was Staffordshire.
Yeah.
And was Mr. Tradewell from Staffordshire as well?
Mr. Tradewell was from Staffordshire
And
as well.
Tradewell, Staffordshire local authority, they believed they had the power to do anything.
Indeed, yeah.
And so the police are behaving the same way. They can just publish people's, without any due process, without any conviction, they just publish people's names.
Well, the key point here, Mike, is that they've been through a training course where the training course boasts it's producing people who are able to operate outside authority. So in this police constable's mind, he's in his proper area. Breaking the law.
If I read that properly, he didn't, because the phrase that Julia Middleton uses is acting beyond authority. He said without authority.
Yeah.
And I think that that changes the context of it completely.
Well, it just gives you free rein to do what you want, Mike. So this is the man who's now in charge of major incidents within the Independent Police Complaints Commission. So we shouldn't worry. That's probably the man who's got the whistleblower's safety at heart. Well, let's have a look at how this really works. So we just bring up a few people on the screen. If we can pop this one up, Theo, please. We've got, of course, Amber Rudd now. She holds the can, Home Secretary. We've got Mark Sedwell, the Permanent Secretary to the Home Office. Now, I believe it would have been his staff that actually did that little dirty deed with the letter. But in the letter, the other gentlemen are mentioned. So we've got Sir Oliver Heald, Minister for Courts and Justice. We've got Brandon Lewis, there he is, Minister for Policing. 27 days, utter silence on what that police whistleblower said. And we've got Sir Philip Lee, that should be Sir Philip Lee. The other name shouldn't be there, so apologies for that. Parliamentary Under Secretary for Victims, Youth and Family Justice. So this is the scam. We've got the Cabinet Office running the training of the civil service. And how are they doing this? They're bringing in behavioural change organisations. Common Purpose has been in there, but there's now others who will choose Common Purpose. They are bringing in the future leaders. And what we see is a loss of basic thinking. Common sense is out the window. And we've got people totally desensitised. When I talked to the Home Office media staff, they were not interested in the little girl dead in the gutter. It was irrelevant to them. Desensitised. We're not allowed to know who the staff are or what their role is. We've got private call centres to block the public. We've got recording of the public, which I believe is there to induce fear. For training and recording purposes, Mike, I think that's to induce fear in the public. And then we've got rid of the separation of powers, so collaboration wrecks that. We've got the lie of independence. If we look at the police officer we've just discussed, we'll find that he originally worked for the MOD, so he's a government man, and now they're saying they can act outside authority. So add the last bit of a never-ending circle of complaints. If you try and complain about this, they just take you around in circles. This is the government's lying machine to cover up the abuse of children. Mm-hmm. It's now, what's the word? It's now establishing itself extremely quickly And one of the things that I've noticed, we've got a lot of people at the moment, they're desperate to get petitions in, which is a begging letter effectively. So they're not actually thinking to themselves, how do we get into the individuals who are the people driving the policy, which is what I think we need to do. Where does it end? Well, this is as good an example as anything. We've got Graham Duckworth, who has been trying to get the truth out about his brother who died under horrible and mysterious circumstances. And as Graham did that, of course, he has been hounded and victimised by British Transport Police and police forces across the country, including Wales. So if I can just bring this up on screen, several of you have asked for details because at the moment Graham is locked up in Cardiff prison. He would like some good letters. If you feel you can write a letter or a card of support, that's the address you should use. Why should you do this? Because I have a feeling in the not too distant future, it could be any one of us that is inside prison simply for daring to challenge what the British government says and does.
Indeed. So we'll just leave that up for a second. That's Graham Duckworth, A5590DV is his prison number, A5590DV, HMP Cardiff, Knox Road, Cardiff, CF24 0UG. And I know he'd appreciate some support. Now, hopefully, Mark, you've been following all that, and we can bring you back in at this point. We want to talk about tax because the global tax system is something that you and I have been discussing for about 3 years now, since the 2013 Bilderberg conference. And this looks like we're heading more and more infrastructure being pushed through. So this is tough new sanctions, apparently announced from HMRC for offshore tax evaders. So the proposals, they say, will mean that those who do not come forward and pay outstanding taxes from offshore investments and accounts will face tougher penalties, up to 3 times the tax they try to evade. And it's going to increase the risk of potential criminal charges, they say. They are going to target evaders from October 2016. And the Financial Secretary of Treasury, who's Jane Ellison, she said, every penny of tax that people evade deprives our public services of essential funding, and we're focused on collecting all the tax that is due. Well, alongside this, they are opening their worldwide disclosure facility, and that's opening from the 5th of September 2016. And the worldwide disclosure facility will allow them to, it's basically, seems like a bit of a system where people that they allege owe outstanding tax can sort of confess and put their affairs in order without any sort of special terms, as they describe it, any sanctions. So whether that goes as far as being an amnesty or not, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, Mark, what this seems to be doing is building on all the stuff that we've seen developing since the 2013 Bilderberg group meeting and all the furore over the Panama Papers and so on.
Coming through better. I made some adjustments on my end. Worldwide disclosure, those are the key words here. They're obviously casting the net wide and making it more integrated at 3 years running since Bilderberg 2020 saw this coming. So you're right, Mike, this is a very major development. It's becoming more integrated, more widespread, more organized, and they're really going to be targeting your average business people before long. The super rich will be able to slip out of the news pretty much on this. This is mainly to target the middle classes ultimately, and the smaller guy. They'll make it look like the plutocrats are going to be ensnared by this, but I think largely special interests will escape this tax while everyone else will be subjected to it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And in the meantime, then, this article here from France 24, US steps up fight against the EU tax crackdown on Apple. And what they're complaining about is the US Treasury complaining that the European Commission is investigating Apple, Amazon, Starbucks, Fiat Chrysler, and so on for their tax activities. because they undermine the international tax system, apparently. So these investigations have major implications for the United States. In particular, recoveries imposed by the Commission would have an outsized impact on US companies. So basically, what we're seeing here is the Treasury Department in the United States complaining that the European Commission is investigating US companies that are operating in Europe with a view to trying to get more corporation tax from those US companies that are for any trade that they do in Europe, and the US suggesting that this means that those companies will not be paying tax in the United States. So what we seem to be seeing here is a deliberate attempt to cause angst between countries, with a view to, as we've been talking about for quite some time, this globalized. Well, they're going to begin with corporation tax, this globalized corporation tax system, and of course, I would say, Mark, this is going to run into the whole discussion over TTIP as well.
Indeed, this is.
And right, so Mark has gone at that point.
Suffering
well,
a bit.
that is a shame. Sorry, Mark, we didn't get any of that.
Oh, yes, this is a very important issue, and we're going to investigate this much more on my side of the pond. There's a lot to sort out there, but the Bilderberg tax regime, if we want to call it that, is clearly growing.
Yes, indeed. Right, okay, and let's move on then. Social housing. I was pretty amazed by this little article here, a press release from the government regarding social housing, and they're saying the social housing sector remains in a strong financial position with access to sufficient finance, and this is according to the latest quarterly survey published by the Homes and Communities Agency. Now, what are they talking about? They're talking about the fact that social housing providers, and they say that there are 49 of them taking advantage of this, are making use of what they describe as freestanding financial derivatives to hedge against variable rate debt. So they've taken out debt from banks at a variable rate, and as the terms that the banks have imposed on them with regard to the loans, they have been obliged to take out these interest rate swaps. So this is very similar to what the banks were forcing small businesses to do in the last 2 or 3 years, and this became one of the mis-selling scandals. But what has happened here is that John Walters, who's the Deputy Director of Regulation, has said that it's all right, because despite the fact that the facilities, the interest rate swaps that are imposed on them, they lost effectively billions of pounds as a result of the value of those swaps changing. It's all right because all the social housing companies were able to renegotiate their positions, and they're still financially strong enough to continue. So what we have here is private companies that are there supposedly to provide a social function, are operating for profit, but even worse than that, they're taking on debt that have, as part of the terms and conditions, a pretty advanced derivatives product that they potentially don't really understand, which is costing them billions. This is money that should be going into the social housing in the first place.
Well, what it is, but if we think through how this has come about, Mike, basically we had all of the public housing stock, so-called council houses, where people had security of tenure. They had that house for life. They were in a secure dwelling. All of that stock is simply handed over to a quasi private company. I say quasi because, of course, they moved across local authority people to help run those to run those housing associations. Then they brought in the corporate element to it. Now we're introducing dangerous money. What happens when they default on these arrangements? Who owns that housing stock? Presumably it goes to the banks.
Indeed. And does that mean people end up being evicted from social housing?
Or do they end up with a bank being their landlord? And of course, the other thing the housing associations have brought in is a whole load of rules about what you can and can't do in your own home. So if you're too noisy, you can be thrown out. If you have a row with your neighbour, you can be thrown out. So look at those draconian rules and then say in the future your landlord will be HSBC. That's where I think it's going.
Yep. Okay, financial news then. This is Handelsblatt International, and they're talking about the European Central Bank. And this, I think, gives some very interesting insight into the type of activities and shenanigans that the financial elites are prepared to affect. So they're saying that the policies of the European Central Bank are creating chaos in the European financial system. We've already discussed the state that Deutsche Bank is in, but Deutsche Bank and other hedge funds are really starting to clamour here. They're demanding things are changed before the system collapses. So Handelsblatt, saying, citing in particular Deutsche Bank's chief executive John Cryan, and he's saying that monetary policy is now running counter to the aims of strengthening the economy and making the European banking system safer. So let's just read that again, because what he's saying is that the monetary policy being set by the European Central Bank is now running counter to the aims of strengthening the economy and making the European banking system safer. So they're deliberately crashing the system, is what he's saying. He's saying that this is mainly his complaint is with regard to negative interest rates, which we've covered quite a bit in the past, and said that they're utterly insane. But we get perhaps a hint as to why this is happening in this Reuters article here. Inadequate Eurozone reforms could force ECB to act. And what they're saying is here that Benoit Coire, apologies for my pronunciation of that, who is an executive board member of the European Central Bank and a sidekick to Mario Draghi, was speaking to an audience in Geneva and was saying that basically European governments need to implement structural reforms and fiscal policies. So that's austerity, basically. Otherwise, the European Central Bank is going to intensify its monetary expansion. So they're going to do more of what the Deutsche Bank is complaining about. And that's going to create even more risk in the financial system. And Quarry said, if nothing takes place, the European Central Bank may have to do more. The only message here is if there's not much taking place on the structural reform front, then there's not much taking place on the fiscal policy front. From what can be done, then the European Central Bank would have to do more. And so that has to be seen in the context of what Deutsche Bank was saying there, Brian. And the implications for the financial system and therefore all our lives are huge. But this is a central bank effectively crashing the system.
And everything moving towards that crash.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, let's come back on to the idea that we're not seeing our politicians and our civil service make normal decisions. A lot of people say they see things in the news, listen to things in the news. They say that's ridiculous, it's madness, it's bizarre, it's bonkers was one of the headlines we've seen recently. Well, we're going to say, have a look at the training mechanism for the Cabinet Office and the civil service. And this is some other documents which we found over the last 24 hours. So we've got the Cabinet Office talking about piloting new social mobility measures, a new 1-month pilot to test the socio-economic backgrounds of 4,000 of the most senior staff in government. So don't worry about this, Mike, because this is all anonymous. They're just going to look into the detail. I'll read a bit of it off screen. Whether the individual ever had refugee status, whether they were ever a carer, what secondary school they went to, the highest qualification their parents got. So this is very, very personal and penetrating information. But the government says, don't worry, we're going to use it because we've all got your best interests at heart. So where are they going with this? Well, it's basically to select people, to draw in a more diverse base of people. So this means they don't want people with traditional British values. They're going to draw in people from the widest possible range, and then they're going to accelerate them through the training system of the civil service, and they are going to give those people common purpose or other behavioural reframing treatment. If you want to have a look at this yourselves, so don't believe what we're saying, just have a look at the socio-economic diversity in the Fast Stream publication. It's been done by the Cabinet Office with the Bridge Group, but don't worry, this is all independent. And here's some of the hypnotic language. If you understand what this actually means, please would you email us, because we don't. This is a quote from an anonymous civil service employee. This is genuine. We want to be bold. With the evidence for change, we will make change happen. It's time to do something. Are you okay with that, Mike?
Clear as mud.
It's clear. This is hypnotic language. This is very dangerous stuff. These insights now give us that solid base for change. We need urgency, but we also need to be considered and to use evidence, not to use assumptions and gut reactions. This agenda is too important.
Which agenda?
What agenda? What change? Anonymous civil service employee. And this is meaningless. Language by anonymous reframed people, but the key point is they believe in what they're saying. So we've now got key civil service employees who are not talking in a normal language. Change, more change. What are you changing from? What are you changing to? That's never stated. And basically these people now believe in their own bunker mentality. So this is part of the executive summary of that report. If we can just pop that one up. The Fast Stream is the government's flagship graduate development program equipping candidates to become future leaders of the civil service. It was created to ensure that present and future governments are supported by leaders able to respond to diverse situations and changing priorities. So we could laugh at this, but it's not to be laughed at. This is very, very dangerous psychological reframing of the people we rely on to get sensible political government policy into effect. Well, it's all independent, as you can imagine. So let's have a look at the Bridge Group, and a nice picture of Nick Miller there, the director. And what have they got to say about themselves? Well, the Bridge Group is a charitable policy association resourcing and promoting social mobility, so that's okay. And the important thing is they're independent, recognising the importance of a non-partisan approach that is not allied to a political party, remember that statement, nor a specific organisation. There's a lot of these statements, but we thought this was interesting because it says collaboratively, we're delivering our objectives with carefully selected organisational partners across sectors. So they're independent in collaboration.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's have a look at where they started from. Because when you have a look at Nick Miller, you discover that this was originally started by none other than Mr. Nick Clegg. But they're independent of political parties, of course, Mike.
Totally.
And then who are they working with? They're working with Google, KPMG, and Google has put in a lot of assistance to their work in order to prepare briefings for the Cabinet Office. So as we were talking about yesterday, with Facebook, we've now got Google, we've got KPMG mixed in with the British government. But the other one I can add is that Nick Miller is very big on Goldman Sachs. So there we are. Who's actually training the new civil service? What is the language they're using? Change, more change. Who's driving that? Nick Clegg, politician, coupled with Goldman Sachs and Google.
The usual suspects. Huh?
The usual suspects. It's pretty easy. Once you know where to look, what we need is for, of course, many people to be clamouring to their MP, asking why British government and the nation is being handed over to the likes of huge global corporations such as Google.
I think we'll finish there.
You want to finish there? You don't want to mention Saudi?
No, we'll keep that till tomorrow.
Okay, we'll keep Saudi till tomorrow. If we've still got a line with you, Mark, would you like to just give us an end comment on anything that takes your fancy?
That last item certainly begs the question of whether Facebook and Google attend about the
No, it isn't working, I'm afraid.
Well, I think we've got a perfect demonstration. They can't even run the internet, and now they've moved in to run the British.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. So they can't run the internet, and we've got similar problems in fluency in the British government. It's easy when you know where to look. We'll end there. We'll be back same time tomorrow with David Scott and Northern Exposure. Join us then. Bye-bye.